Welcome, everybody, to the best damn pod in the land. I'm your host, Chad Stryker. With me, as always, Dan Divjak. And we have a special guest from College Football Stop. Terry joins us today. So, Terry, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. Glad you guys have me on here. I think we're going to have a great show here. So get us kicked off, man.
All right. Well, yeah, absolutely. So, we're happy to have these pod mashups. Dan and I love to do them. Dan, how are you today, man?
I'm good, man. I'm very, very, very anxious. Um, it has nothing to do with Jamie French. It has
Mm.
everything to do with my fiance leaving for 2 days for a middle of the week wedding and me having to be at home with the 2-year-old toddler by myself. So, yeah, I'm scared. So, other than that, I'm good.
Do you need a hug, man? I'll come give you a hug.
You got this, man.
Hey,
I'm gonna need a flask or two by Friday.
hey, man, if you want to bring me, you want to bring her up, just bring her up. I mean, Hadley would love to have a little sister to run around with, so just bring her up and
Man,
they can
this is
hang
fun,
out.
man.
You wouldn't even know she was here because Hadley would do all the stuff. So maybe not the diapers, but
I tell you, man, having a toddler on this side of 50, it's a whole new world.
I feel that.
I
I
can only
feel that.
imagine.
Yeah,
But yeah,
pass,
no, I'm
pass.
stoked that Terry's joining us, and we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks everybody for joining us. Yeah, and if you haven't had a chance to check out College Football Stop, do it. Terry has great content. So, and again, we like doing pod mashups. The best thing about our program, if you don't know this, Dan and I own it, so we can do whatever the hell we want. We
That's
can
right.
invite whoever we want on here. We have we're under no contract with the university or anybody else. So, anyways, that before you forget or before I forget, like and subscribe both pods. We would appreciate it. And so diving right into the, I guess, insanity that is Twitter today and yesterday. So news broke of David Sanders, and he was on campus with his three sisters, his mom, grandparents, and 75 other people or whatever, and really liked it. Has us now in the top two. Now, depending on who you talk to, there's a different top two, but Ohio State's in both. So Terry, how you feel about that? You like it? Love it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the visit doesn't mean nothing, right? It means something. It was something that nobody was expecting to happen. He got up here, and I think it's huge for him because one of the biggest talking points with his recruitment has been distance to home. And it seems like Ohio State's really nailing down, like, hey, you guys have already came up here twice, and it wasn't too hard on you. And the people that I know that I trust the most in terms of recruiting think that David Sanders is going to be in the class. So I love what I'm seeing. That'd be a huge pickup for Justin Fry, man. Obviously, a guy who needs it with some of the criticism that he's taken already. But I don't know, man. I'm excited. You get a big number one tackle in the country, and you can actually close that deal. That's huge for the program going forward.
Absolutely. And Dan, I know you always have hot takes. So, David Sanders, you like it, I'm sure. Thoughts on pairing him with Carter Lowe, though?
I think that gets a lot of goodwill from Justin Fry, right? And I texted you the other day, and a lot of it has to do with the info that Terry was just talking about. But I'm calling it now that he will be in the class. I feel really, really good about it. The distance thing, I think we've overcome just fine. They're going to get to fly and enjoy their trip rather than have to drive to these other locales. It's about the same time, it sounds like. But I don't think there's an easy way to get to Athens from Charlotte. I mean, I've made that drive from Atlanta. It's 4 hours. Um, so I think he's in the class, and to Terry's point, some of the heat that Justin's been catching. I'm really starting to have a change of heart about that. When you kind of step back and take the emotion out of it, and you look at the fact that the guy, I mean, he joined our staff in January of 22, right?
Yep.
So that 22 class was already signed. So his first recruiting cycle, he got Luke and he got Austin. And Luke played as a true freshman, and Austin's in the two deep right now. And then, we just saw 6 or 7 guys drafted in the first round that were 3-stars, offensive linemen. And this last class that he just got with the Armstrong twins and with Ian Moore, I've told you before, man, I love Ian Moore.
Mm-hmm.
I think the kid's got a mean streak that we don't have right now, or we have very little of. So let's back off the guy for a little bit. Let's get him a chance to have a few cycles, develop his guys. Um, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised when the dust settles a couple years from now.
I think Dan's cooking right now.
Yeah, yeah, you're onto something, man. So I am every bit as the person who's critical of Justin Fry, and my frustration it comes from the development side. Now we will see this year because Josh Simmons projected now to by others to maybe be a day 2 draft pick, came in last year from a smaller school, leaned out, looks great, got in the room with Mick. So we'll see, and does Donovan Jackson have a better year this year? Can Carson Hinsman be the starter at right guard? Does Fryer, turn the corner? So all those guys were already in the program. So does the development piece kick in? And if it does, and then you add in Chip Kelly's run style, run game, run thoughts, we'll see. And I'm going to touch on the one thing from the David Sanders aspect that you mentioned, Dan, is having done the flight from Columbus to Charlotte a lot in my career, early career. It's an easy peasy flight. It's like an hour and a half. Like you're up, they give you drinks and peanuts. I can't have peanuts, but they throw a snack at you and you're down. Like that's literally the flight. And so you can do that other than maybe a little bit of the wait time at the airport faster than you can drive from Charlotte to Atlanta. That's for dang sure, man.
I don't think the Sanders family will be flying commercial. At least
I don't either.
Smart, right?
Exactly.
I don't either.
That wait
I'm
time
just
is
saying.
not a thing.
I'm just saying, like it's an hour and 35 minutes, hour and 40 minutes. So it's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right. So the other idiotic trend, and I'm going to say it that way, or topic, I guess, on Twitter right now. Dan, I'll have you go first on this one. So Jamie French, apparently we're out of the top 3 and the crystal ball was on Ohio State. And so what are your thoughts, I guess?
Well, so first things first, the world of recruiting is no longer what it was 2 or 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's starting to get like the NFL draft, where you've got agents and other teams putting out information. I mean, you always have the negative recruiting, right? But when it comes to nil, now that you've got NIL money, you've got agents dangling other schools and other interests out there to try to drive that package up. Now, here's the mistake that French could make. Jamie French is not Jeremiah Smith. I'm willing to say that Decorian Moore is not Jeremiah Smith. So if any of these guys think they're going to get the package that Jeremiah Smith got coming out of high school, and that's an issue, right? Because it's South Florida Express. And that's what we're getting into. I mean, are we going to start to see where it's like NFL contracts where as long as you're the last guy that signed, you're going to be paid the most? Or is these schools going to start to like wrangle it in a little bit and say, listen, man, you're not JJ, bro. So with that being said, his list of official visits came out over the summer. And, that I remember that post pissed me off because it showed his 4 visits for the summer, but it didn't mention the visit he already had scheduled for the fall with us. Yeah. That hasn't changed. My understanding is that has not changed. He's still coming. He's going to have an OV here in the fall. So, I mean, it's receiver, man. It's like the one position I'm not going to lose sleep over.
Yep.
All right, Terry, what do you say, man? Where are you at on this?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Dan on that, man. I just think that position specifically with Brian Hartline, I'm not worried about it. And I think that if Jamie French wants to play games like this, there's a good chance that he could end up just not having a spot in the class anyway. If guys like Decorian Moore or Vernell Brown, which I don't think is an option now, but if Jamie French is not, Brian Hartline is going to circle back on guys like that. But honestly, if it were me, I think that Jamie French still ends up at Ohio State. I know I'm saying that, but I think that he'll circle back. I think that he'll take that visit during the season like he already has scheduled, and Brian Hartline will close that deal and he'll still end up here. You can't look at him like Jeremiah Smith, like Dan said, but he's not looked at very much lower in terms of like ranking. You know what I mean? So I think he's going to play the game, and ultimately, I think he'll end up at Ohio State because I think Brian Hartline got in on him really early and kind of made that impression, and now he's just playing the game. So that's where I'm at with it.
All right. Yeah, those are sensible takes. So if you want my 2 cents, I agree with you that he is playing a little bit of a game. I'm under the impression in those that I've talked to around the program that they are looking to take 4 wide receivers in this class. And so it'll be interesting to me because I of the group that you mentioned, Lockett and Decorian Moore are my top 2. Jamie French actually isn't in my top 2. He'd be my 3rd wide receiver in this class.
That's interesting.
So, and if you want to, and everybody that I say that to, they're like, you're a little out there, but the reason is Jamie French reminds me of Ben Victor with better body control. So if you wanted me to give you a comp, and when Ben Victor came in, I thought he was going to be elite, but Jamie French is thin like that. They're built very similarly. So I'll leave it at that. I'm wondering if the Jets have cooled a little bit just because I think that they are really interested in bringing 4 guys in this class. We've harped on how, thin the wide receiver room is this year, and then you're going to lose Emeka Egbuka next year. So, and then they're, depending on how Ennis and Tate play, and Jeremiah Smith, they're, there would be another full season before you'd really possibly be in the rotation, So there's some stuff there. There is. All right. Well, go ahead.
I mean, look at that room though. I mean, who are we losing next year? We're losing Emeka, right? I think
that's it.
I'm convinced Ballard's gonna. Well, Ballard, he needs to be done. We know that Ballard will figure out a way to stick around and be on the roster if he can. Man, I bet he looks really good in 7-on-7. Anyways. That's Chad's boy.
Leave Jaden Ballard alone. Leave him alone.
I've always been a Ballard defender.
He met his grandfather at a Raising Cane's or something after the spring game, and he became even more of a fanboy.
That's true. I did.
But I mean, that 4 guys seems like a lot. But then when you think about the depth, I don't know. You got Mylan Graham coming in still. You got Demarion, who's going to be in the wide receiver room. I don't know, man. Terry, what do you think about the depth in the wide receiver room?
Yeah, I think for this year, I think the depth is going to be fine. Going into next year, I think we could run into some depth issues. I mean, like Chad said, you're going to have a lot of those guys coming back. But I guess that all depends on how guys like Mylan Graham turn out. Because, if you go into next year with Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham, maybe JB, Bryson Rogers. I mean, that's not too bad. I don't know, man. I think the depth is not terrible, but I think they need to play. It's a bunch of guys who haven't played.
Yeah. The reason I mentioned a 4-person class is because everybody you just mentioned, except for Jeremiah Smith, could leave after next year, after 2025. So Ennis, correct. Tate, well, not Mylan Graham, but Bryson Rogers, all of them, they could be, you could be losing 3 guys. Mm-hmm. And then you have to deal with the transfer portal. But all right, so Dan and I talked about this, and we wanted to get your take, and we like to get other people's takes because sometimes we get tired of hearing ourselves talk. So Terry, was there a position group that surprised you as spring practice wrapped up after the spring game? Was there one group that you're like, wow, I did not anticipate it looking like, good or bad, looking like that?
All right. I actually could not wait for you to ask this question. So we was talking earlier about Justin Fry, and the answer for me is the offensive line. Now, so many people were freaking out about offensive line, talking about we need this, we need that in the portal. And I don't subscribe to that. I never did. I think if you were going to bring in someone who's an upgrade, obviously that's what you do, right? That's any position, though. Like, our corners are great, but if you have an upgrade, you bring them in. Same with any, whatever. It's an upgrade, that's fine. But I didn't think that we needed anything. And after watching the offensive line kind of run some of the Chip Kelly run scheme, in the spring game, watching them get to the second level and the third level of a defense that I know is really good. I'm super excited about the offensive line. They surprised me. Guys like Seth McLaughlin actually surprised me. I see multiple plays where he got to the even third level of the defense and was blocking people. So I don't know. I think that they're going to surprisingly end up being one of the best units on this team this year. And that ultimately comes back to the original conversation we had about Justin Fry. I think that he's a good coach. So that was all.
Cool. Yeah. I want to ask you a subsequent question since you brought up the offensive line. What do you think about Montgomery not coming out and starting at right guard in the spring game when he seemingly was in the group of starters initially? Mm-hmm. Sorry, Dan.
No, I think that it's perfectly fine. That's what I think. I think people should relax. It's perfectly fine. He's either going to win the job or not in the fall. And he's a year younger than most of the guys that are in that position, at least 1 year younger. And that does make a difference. If you look, I just saw a clip from I think an Oregon fan on Twitter yesterday where the Harmon kid from Michigan State kind of whooped up on Carson Hinsman on a rep. He was young. He was not super strong yet, inexperienced. The same thing could happen with Luke Montgomery. I just hope that they figure out a way to get those guys some reps. They need to develop on the field. And I hope they do that over some of the games where we win pretty easily and stuff like that throughout the year.
I agree with you. That would be good. Dan?
Was that clip from last year?
Yeah.
That game was later in the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so which group surprised me?
Yeah, which group surprised you the most coming out of spring?
You know what? The reason I smiled when you talked about Luke Montgomery, running with the ones all spring and then not rolling out with the ones, it's like, oh, well, it's not the only one that happened to.
Yeah, I knew where you were going with it.
I'm ready for this.
But as far as what position group surprised me, you know what? It's probably the depth along the defensive line. And the reason I say that is because there was just so much chatter about Larry being done. And, we almost lost Edric, which means we would have had a class of just Menza coming in. And, that there was no depth and that we needed to go in the portal. And why didn't we take the guy from UTSA and blah, blah, blah. I think the coaches, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they might be a little bit better connected as to what's going on in those rooms than we are. It's
shocking.
And I think they knew that depth was there, but to hear it develop, between the off season and the spring, for him to say that, a guy like Justin Moore is the ideal 3 technique. And
Jason Moore.
And he's never played it down for us, Jason Moore, rather. That just tells me all I need to know about that room. So the depth along the defensive line and the number of guys that should play, okay, I stress should, because it needs to happen. That was a nice surprise coming out of the spring. And that does wonders for everything. What that does is and I don't know, are we going to talk about recruiting a little bit?
We can wrap up the show with it if you want.
Yeah. So I'll touch on it a little bit right now. I mean, I think that defensive line is going to be critical to us being able to use the jack. I think the front and the back ends are going to allow us to use that jack position this year, unlike we have in the last 2 years, because we can atone for mistakes, right? And that's the only way we're going to get a guy like Justin Hill and this other kid that was, I think, who's it, Grady, was talking about how he'd be used as a jack.
Zion Grady, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, they're obviously talking about that position with the players. I think we're going to see that a lot more this year with who we've got and who we've got to atone for mistakes throughout the course of a play. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a comfort level there to use that position.
Cool. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. I was going to use the defensive line, but I agree with you as far as like position groups that I came away surprised with. The other one, if you wanted me to like do a 1B, would be the running back room, because of the surprise of James Peoples and then how well Sam Williams-Dixon played in the spring game. So I went when we knew Hayden was leaving. I had a little bit of a freak out, and then Alford leaves, Lachlan comes in, weird stuff happening. But I was very surprised with that, and kind of pleasantly surprised. And then to hear Ryan Day and Chip Kelly talk about getting Emeka Egbuka and Brandon Ennis the ball, in a non-traditional way, tells me that they're going to be involved in the running game. So that was kind of where I landed on that. And yeah.
Am I the only one that doesn't get excited about Emeka running the football?
Must be.
No.
I don't get it, man. Like, why aren't we using a guy like Mylan Graham or, these guys that have a little bit more, wiggle in them than Emeka?
Do you remember Emeka as a freshman when he did that?
Emeka as a freshman, but it's still not. I don't know, man. I don't get excited. Maybe it's just that damn 4th and short play against Notre Dame.
Yeah, that killed me.
It looked pretty good when they handed the ball to Jeremiah Smith in the spring game.
Yeah.
He was one block away from cribbing it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right. So here we are, and we all know about Dan's man crush on Devin Brown. Just kidding. Terry, were you surprised when we ended the portal window with all 5 quarterbacks on the roster? I know this has kind of been beat to death by the beat, jokingly. But were you surprised?
No, I mean, honestly, not at all. It just, if you look at a quarterback room and say, okay, there's 5 in there, somebody's going to leave, that's fine. But I think that we've been a little too quick to just be like, oh, this kid's not starting, he's out of here, with the new transfer portal and stuff. And then if you just break down every situation for each quarterback, it didn't really make sense for any of them to leave. The only one that you could say would possibly be Devin Brown, but you're getting into some like, do we know what really happened? I know that Dan's pretty tapped in on that. I also am like a Devin Brown stan, so that's whatever. But anyway,
got my back.
But I mean, that was the only one that you could really see leaving, right? Like Lincoln Keenholz, like he knew he was coming here to develop. He knew that. Aaron and Julian are both young. No reason for them. Will Howard just got here, so not a surprise to me at all that they all stayed.
Dan, I know we talked about this on a recent pod, but all 5 stay. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page as Terry. I think the one that it would have made sense for, potentially, that I wouldn't have even thought twice about would have been Lincoln, just because now and in the future, like where's his spot? He's not going to beat out Devin or Will this year, and I don't see him beating out Julian or Tavian, a year or 2 from now. I just think the kid is so damn raw. So he's the only one that I thought that it might make sense, but where's he going to go and start? He's not going to go and start anywhere.
I was just going to say.
So stick around, get developed for another season.
Yep.
From Chip and Ryan, and then, go somewhere in the fall.
Yeah, you are at Ohio State. You're at the current QBU. You have all the resources, all the nutrition, all the facilities of Ohio State. You're on scholarship. You're getting a good education.
His girlfriend's here.
Yeah. So,
did she follow him to Ohio State?
Maybe I'm giving misinformation.
Yeah, I don't know.
Assume she was here.
I don't know if she's here or not. So, but the fact is, what you get at Ohio State, and we've heard this, so like I'll use, Josh Simmons, even coming from Arizona State, the difference of even Arizona State to Ohio State is significant. Or where did he come from? Was it?
Came from San Diego State.
San Diego State. Sorry, Arizona State, not dissing you, man. But for some reason I had Arizona in my mind, Dan. and yeah, so he came for, there's just a difference, and so why not stay? That would be my take too. Why not? It makes the most sense. And I joked with our buddy Juck from Juck on Bucks, like, because I had been saying all along, I didn't if somebody left, it would be Lincoln, but I didn't think it would happen because I don't want to go play at Iowa. Why would I want to go play at Iowa if I'm Lincoln Keynotes? Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? So, we're so staying with the quarterbacks. We talked about this, and so I know you're a Devin Brown supporter, Terry. So when we're coming out of spring ball, and Dan, I know you're ordered too. So we'll just go through it for everybody. So Dan, I'm going to ask you first. 1, 2, 3. I know Devin's your guy. Are you Devin, Will, Julian? Devin, Will, Lincoln?
I'm Devin, Will. I know I called my shot the other day that Julian's going to redshirt. That it makes no sense for him not to. I don't think he's there physically to be a 3 and done guy. So I just man, but looking ahead, managing that quarterback room, when you got a guy like Tavian coming in, it's almost like you want Julian to be gone in 3. But yeah, no, but I am so sick and tired of the beat. And you know who's starting to get on my list right now? It's Bobby Carpenter, of all people.
Really? Carp?
He is so freak. I mean, listen, I don't consider Carp to be on the beat. I do consider him to have even better access than those guys because
he's at practice all the time.
He's at the practice all the time.
Yep.
And like, if I had to pick one person on that entire beat, if we're going to throw him in there to go out and have a beer with, or to be able to go and hang out with no phones and no social media to document, it would be Bobby Carpenter. Like, that would be fun.
Yeah.
But man, just the dismissiveness of just this assumption that Will's the guy. Like, Will Howard did nothing to separate himself in spring practice, and that should worry people. And not only did he do nothing to separate himself, but he struggled. If all the information we have is correct, which I believe that it is, he struggled. So to just flippantly say that, especially now that the portal's closed, and you don't have to worry about keeping him around anymore, can we start being honest about what happened in the spring?
Yeah, I'm with you. I get it. So, Terry, to you, I'm assuming you have Dev as your starter. So 1, 2, 3. How does it lay out for you?
So I have Devin, Will Howard, Lincoln Keynotes. And kind of echoing what Dan said, I don't think that Julian is physically ready. And I said that, like, as soon as all the hype went up about him, like, if you look at that kid on the field, he doesn't look like he's physically ready. You could tell me the numbers that he's 6'1", 205, all you want, but when he's standing next to the other quarterbacks, he looks like a child. And some of that showed in the spring game when he was having to throw against the wind, and he was not really able to. So he just needs to bulk up, man. That's not saying nothing bad about the kid. He's probably the most naturally talented in the entire room, possibly the highest ceiling in the entire room. I would argue against that because I think that Devin Brown has that kind of ceiling too, but that's just me. People don't want to give Devin Brown credit, and a lot of that came from who said he was going to start and all that stuff. But I just think that anytime it comes down to going out on the field and competing, Devin Brown is a winner. He goes out there and he wins. I mean, he obviously hasn't had a chance to do that in games. But even when he did get in games, you could see that winner mentality. And I go back to the one play that nobody ever talks about, the Penn State game when Devin Brown got hurt, the play he got hurt on. No one ever wants to talk about the fact that he scored a touchdown on that play and didn't get credit for it. And on that play, on that drive, Ohio State was stopped on downs. See, nobody wants to talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he fought for those yards, ended up getting himself hurt, got the touchdown. Obviously, they didn't look at it because he was hurt. But I don't know, man. I just think that with Will Howard, he's a guy who I think that he's reached his ceiling. And I think that if you plug his ceiling into Ohio State, they can win a lot of games, maybe all of their games. I don't know. It just depends on how good the defense really ends up being. But I think with a guy like Devin Brown, if you give him 6 games, at that point he's going to be playing at like a top 5, maybe top 10, at least quarterback in college football level. And I think that if you have that type of ceiling in a player, you should go with it. That's where I'm at with it.
Got it.
Hey, we did not pay Terry to come on and say that. I did not pay Terry to come on and say that.
No, dude,
I already saw your
listen.
Venmo account, Dan. It's too late.
I can't tell you how many shows I had last year saying this offense with Kyle McCord is going to end up losing us a game over and over and over again until the Michigan game. And then we all watched it.
Yeah, we all lived it. All right. So I'm going to be the dissenter in the group. So I'm gonna go with Devin as the starter, Will as the backup, but Julian's my 3, and hear me out. Julian is my 3 because he needs to get the reps for next year. Julian is my 3 because we play Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall. So I'm all good for. It's the same thing where I talked about, or I didn't want Trayvon Henderson and Quinshon Junkins taking handoffs in the fourth quarter against Marshall, against their second team, and somebody rolling up on him. So that's why I'm there. And if Julian is truly the future, and we're just discounting Lincoln, and that's fine. I know that I'm doing that in this like spiel, but for me, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm getting live game reps for the guy that I'm going to anoint next year. And that is saying also that Devin Brown is one and done because he has time to come back. He can come back. So that, how Ryan Day manages this quarterback room is going to be very interesting. But that's why I landed at Julian as my number 3. And I also, kind of want to see what the kid can do.
So let me ask you this. So if he's the 3 on paper, we all know that, I mean, Ryan's got a history of the number 2 guy only handing the ball off.
Right.
So are you suggesting that number 1, Ryan changes that philosophy and he gets the backup some actual reps, and that when it comes time for that Julian actually goes into the game more than Will to get him the reps in the future? Because I don't see Devin and Will getting enough reps in a game to where Julian can go in there and there'd be enough reps left for him to get anything meaningful.
Yeah,
almost like a Gebbia situation last year where he was technically 3rd, but Lincoln would go in before him.
So that's kind of where I landed. Again, it's a philosophy change for Ryan Day, but in my mind, if you're up, let's use Akron, and even though I got my undergrad there, I'm sorry guys. Let's say we're up 45-0 at 8 minutes in the third quarter. Why not? Why not? Like if what Will Howard is, and you know what Will Howard can do. So bringing him in and giving him live game reps, other than just kind of keeping him engaged, what are you doing? He's a 5th-year senior. If Devin Brown's your starter, what are you doing? Just asking.
Does Will still have a red shirt?
Nah, he's a 5th-year senior, right?
Is he have a COVID year?
Well, yeah, he was playing during the COVID year.
Yeah, I thought he came in 2019 though, so I guess he could technically have a COVID year. I thought class of 2020 was, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works, so I don't want to put it out there in the ether.
So let me ask you this: are we going to see Death Star Ryan Day when it comes to managing these quarterbacks this year? I mean, is he going to be Nick Saban, and is he going to just cut somebody off at the knees and not give a shit? Sorry, not care about feelings? Like I said, the portal's closed. Will Howard could leave, but he can't play anywhere else. So why would he leave, right? So is he going to be ruthless?
I'm worried about it, Dan. I really am, man, because
You don't think
I think
got it in him, do you?
I think he has it in him, but I also think that he is so entrenched in the politics side of being the head coach at Ohio State, that it's going to be hard for him. I do think he has it in him though. And kind of looking at the quarterback room right now, I think that he did exactly what he needed to do. A lot of people are mad because all this hype about Will Howard after Devin Brown, it needed to happen, to be honest. We couldn't go through all of spring with Will Howard not getting any hype at all. And then let's say he does leave. He's like, I'm not going to stay here. Everybody hates me here, whatever. Like, obviously people don't hate him, but you get where I'm going, right? I think Ryan Day simmered a lot of that down and got some Will Howard hype out there because he needed Will Howard to stay. Your quarterback room cannot be Devin Brown and then a bunch of people who've never stepped foot in a football game. I mean, and even Devin Brown doesn't have enough reps to be like your main guy. So
yeah. Well,
got it.
Corey from Scarlet and Great, he threw out the idea at me that he goes, listen, he goes, do you think it's possible that Will Howard wasn't guaranteed anything at all, and he got the money because he wasn't guaranteed anything at all in order to get him to come here as insurance?
Absolutely.
So I mean, I thought that was a really brilliant take on that. And
yeah,
I actually buy into that. And I had said something along those lines before, is like, he's insurance, but I don't know, man. I just don't know if Ryan's got it in, but then there's also that thing like, okay, we're not Ole Miss. We're not Oregon when it comes to the portal. We're not USC, right? We're kind of like a UGA. UGA, I think, is even less than us. We're like a UGA and a Bama, right? We're going to build our roster through recruiting. So does that come into play? Like, hey, wait a minute. Devin's a guy we recruited, and if all things are equal, we're going to go with the guy we recruited rather than a one-year rental in order to maintain goodwill with the people we recruited.
Yeah. So that's something. One more thing on this, Chad. Sorry, I know you're trying to move on, but
no, you're good.
That's something I always say with this conversation. People say, well, Will Howard was paid money, so he's going to start. And my question is, to Ryan Day, what do you think is more important to him? Do you think $1 million from his NIL collective is more important to him, or a spot in his recruiting class in 2 years of development, 2 years of reps in his practice? What do you think is more important to him? And to me, I would think that it would be the spot in the recruiting class and the 2 years of development. Now, obviously, you have to develop into a player that's good enough and better than that portal player, but I don't think people are looking at it from both sides.
Yeah, I don't have arguments against either. So in today's modern era of football, $1 million might as well be $10. The way that NIL collectives are raking it in. So, but I agree, I get it. And Floco had a great point. I never thought about it like that. That there was no guarantee given, but they gave him the money so that he would come. So it's makes a lot of sense. Who. I guess we won't really know until somebody actually writes the book. So, so I want to switch from offense. We've done a deep dive kind of into offense. So defensively, for me, this defense is probably the best on paper I've maybe ever seen, with the exception of the 2006 defense that I didn't think anybody would ever score on ever. Until we played Florida and LSU. So, well, I guess LSU technically in 2006. So, Terry, there's one A and one B here. So, do you think we are going to see the full-on Jim Knowles riverboat gambler in action this year? Is it really going to happen finally?
Yes, I think that you'll see it, but I think that Jim Knowles overcorrected a little bit too much last year, and I think that you'll see him dial that back. So we'll have a good mixture of, some of them like zero coverage blitzes at times, and then drop back and play coverage sometimes. And I mean, I just think that you have to see the jack position. I think you have to. It's not a whether we will or not. We have to. Otherwise, what are we wasting our time recruiting these kids for that we're telling them to play that position?
Man,
why are we not putting those resources elsewhere?
Yeah, you just made me have a brain aneurysm when you said zero blitz coverage, because I just have this mental image of Lathan Ransom falling down. Okay, I have to recover from that. And, go ahead, Terry.
I don't know, like that situation is a perfect one that you're talking about. Like, some of that could be helped with Ryan Day taking more of a step back approach. Because why the hell were we playing coverage like that where Lathan Ransom was 1-on-1 up 14 or whatever in the Georgia game? Why? What was the point in that? You need to make them waste time. And Jim Knowles just was doing his thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dan, is Jimmy Boy gonna turn it loose?
I don't think he's going to turn it loose. I think he's going to incorporate that part of his scheme into the game more than he did last year, and not as much as he did the first year. And it just goes back to what I mentioned earlier. We've got the horses to atone for a mistake on a play. Now, nothing's going to atone for the last guy left in coverage falling down. But I just think he's got different athletes at the linebacker position this year. You know, I think he compensated a little bit last year. I mean, what we've learned about Tommy shouldn't even have been on the field for half of our games last year.
Oh no, I feel bad for the kid
with the injuries that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And Steele, you know, Steele was a good soldier, but he was, you know, Steele. We saw Steele's ceiling 2 years ago. I just think with the type of athletes we have on the field this year, I think we're going to see the defensive ends turned loose a little bit more. I do still think that is part of the scheme, but I think we're going to see a lot more activity from the linebacker spot. And quite frankly, I think we're going to see a lot more activity from the safety spot coming in and blitzing. I mean, Caleb Downs will have 3 or 4 sacks this year. Easy.
calling his shot now.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I think he's going to eat in this system.
Yeah. So, you guys have had 2 points that I want to agree with. Number one, I do think he overcorrected. Like he course corrected. It was almost like we were over here on the pendulum and he came clear the heck back over to the other side. And I'm sure that was Ryan Day a little bit saying, we can't get beat deep. We can't give up long plays. You know, that's all anybody's talking about. Fix it. So that's point one. Point two, yes, the jack position. We're out there recruiting these guys. Justin Hill has flat out said, I'm going to be watching how they use the position. So it is important that, you know, that is reworked, re-engineered, and used. And then they have. So I'm gonna postulate that if CJ Hicks and Cody Simon are the starters, you could theoretically use Sonny Styles in the jack position in his freak athletic nature and ability, and just, you know, see ball, get ball, you know, and that to me is so appealing that, or vice versa, you know, CJ Hicks is a great athlete too. So I do think that there's that. And you also have Mitch Melton, who is like an amazing pass rusher. And if you ask the offensive lineman, he's the hardest one of them to block. So
who comes off the field for the jack? Is it one of
I think your nickel corner does.
Okay.
So it'd be Jordan Hancock, technically. Because if you think about it, you're running 5 defensive backs. You're not, if you bring in a third linebacker, you're not in nickel, you're in a 43.
I like the idea of that Eagle defense a little bit more.
I do too.
Slide JT and Jack inside, and then bring in, you know, put Sonny on the edge with Mitchell Melton.
Knowles may do it different, Terry, too. He may pull a defensive end off or a tackle.
Yeah, no, he does that too. Yeah, I think either way, if you could just get that position on the field and just have that guy, because Knowles does a lot with that, with stopping the run too, that a lot of people don't even know about because we haven't seen him do it here at Ohio State. But I mean, he'll do a lot of lining that jack up like behind a nose and you know, like right behind him, right on his, you know, on his rear, and then they'll kind of split off and wreck the run game. So I don't know, man. We got to see it.
Yeah,
see it.
That's it. We got to see it. Awesome. So Dan, I'm going to slide back to you. You wanted to. This is your topic, so I'm coming to you for you wanted to discuss a little bit about recruiting, and I'm all game for it. So we talked about French. We talked about Sanders. You know, I think that, you know, I laugh a little bit about Marquise Davis going to Kentucky and shoving Michigan in a locker. So what's on your mind?
It just seems to be really picking up steam. I mean, we're about what, 5 weeks, 6 weeks out from the big weekend.
Yeah, June 21st, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be huge. I do think that we get Justin Hill's commitment on July 3rd. The fact that he said he's going to be watching how we use the jack, and then said that he's committing on July 3rd, which I believe is his birthday. Tells me that we get his commitment on the 3rd, and he knows that if we don't use that position the way he likes, he can always change it.
Fair.
I don't see it being a situation where he commits to Oregon and then watches how we use the jack and flips to us because we use the jack. I don't think it goes down that way. I think it's the other way. There's a lot of chatter out there that Woodby is not feeling the love anymore. And what does that mean? Does that mean McNutt is in the fold? Does it mean Brew is in the fold? That group that Terry and I are in, they seem to think that McNutt's a lock. Isn't that what people are saying in there, Terry?
Yeah, they are saying that. Now, I would. So the Blake Woodby thing's a little unusual. I do think that it probably has a little bit more to do with the Dorian Brew smoke than it does Trey McNutt, because listening to McNutt, he's saying he's going to run this thing all the way out. And if you listen to, and they're people I trust, Bill Kurlick and Berm, both of, there's hesitation when they talk about Trey McNutt. There isn't that confidence that you would think you would want to hear out of a legacy, out of an Ohio kid. There's just something there. And, I'm all for getting your $5,000 to go visit the school and getting your Beats headphones and all that stuff. Great. Do it. But at some point, you're either going to be like left out or you got to make a decision. And because Ohio State wants to do 4 or 5 DBs in this class, I'm all for it. But the Woodby thing, I feel like that's more of a Dorian Brew item than it is now it could lead to Trey McNutt down the road, because then they would have lost one, so they could be all in on McNutt too. But yeah, I right now, if you ask me, I don't have Trey McNutt as a lock.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider him a lock, but I just think that ultimately Ohio State will pull that one off. I feel like all the guys that they were supposed to get, they're going to end up getting, which I think we'll end up with Brew, McNutt, all them guys, and then obviously Offord and Sanchez are already committed. So I don't know. Oh, you said TJ. I'm talking about Naeem Offord.
Oh, Naeem Offord. Yeah, I love
Naeem Offord. But
yeah,
TJ,
I love him too. Yeah.
Yes, I love that recruitment. We actually know somebody who was really close to that recruitment. Who he's in that chat that Dan was talking about. So that was pretty sweet. He kind of did a lot to help him, guide him here and stuff. So I don't know, man. TJ. Yeah.
Awesome.
So.
Sweet. Well, yeah, recruiting is up. The 21st is going to be a huge weekend. I kind of want to go to Columbus that weekend and just wander around the Woody. I had a friend of mine, this is in all sincerity, I had a friend, like a really close friend, that went and did that thing that where you can tour the facility, tour the horseshoe. It was like through the foundation, did something or whatever. And he had VIP access, so he got to go into the locker room. And then like he actually sent me some like pictures of like guys like coming out of the Woody and getting in their cars and stuff, and trying to figure out who people were, and but maybe I'll just go park outside the Woody and just kind of wander around, bring a lounge chair,
Let's go people watch.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of going here in Nashville. On3's got that new thing they're doing, the On3 Elite.
Yeah.
And it's for 2 or 3 days here
in
Nashville over Memorial Day weekend.
I heard about it.
I'm thinking of, I know that Sanchez, Offord, and Tavian, I think, have already accepted invites to that. So I think I might go wander down there.
Yeah. To see who you can run into. Awesome.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Well, guys, we're at 50 minutes. We sucked up the energy of the entire show. Terry, really truly appreciate you coming on. We love having guests, and I love your content. You do a great job. And so if you're not following College Football Stop on Twitter, Terry T, he does a great job for all of Buckeye material. And what's cool about Terry is he'll put a take out there and he doesn't care if it's popular or not. So, and we need more people like that and less people like some others we know. So anyways, you guys, I thank you again. Thanks, Dan, as always. I appreciate you guys. And if you guys I hope you guys have a good week. We'll be back on Friday for Buckeye Friday, even though it's not a real one because there's no football this weekend. So you guys stay safe out there. Have a great week. And as always, go Bucks.
Go Bucks.